I never thought the storm I'd face that day would begin at the gate of an airport. But there it was, brewing louder than the weather outside, and it had a name everyone in my neighborhood knew: Karen Lane. She wasn't just any traveler. Back home, she ruled our homeowners association like it was her personal kingdom. A woman who fined neighbors for leaving trash cans out 5 minutes late, who measured the height of hedges with a tape measure, and who once threatened to tow my neighbor Mike's pickup because the paint color did match community standards. To us, she was the self-appointed queen of Cedar Creek. But here, in the anonymous world of Gate C12, she was just another passenger, and that made her dangerous in a different way. I was sitting quietly in a corner, a red polo jeans and worn-out running shoes. No uniform, no wings pinned to my chest, just another guy with a ticket in his pocket waiting for boarding. I was deadheading, as we call it, traveling off duty to position for my next flight. My seat was 2A first class, a small perk after long stretches away from home. I heard her voice before I saw her, gravel in a blender loud enough to turn heads. "I don't think you understand," she told the gate agent. "I am a Platinum Medallion member. Seat 2A is my preferred seat." The agent, a middle-aged woman with the patience of a saint, didn't even flinch. "Ma'am, your ticket is for 3B. Seat 2A has already been assigned." I lowered my phone. Here we go, I thought. Karen wasn't just asking, she was demanding. She leaned over the counter, invading the agent's space. "Then unassign him. I have status. I need that seat for medical reasons." Medical reasons, that was new. I glanced at her, 5'4", tidy blonde bob, sensible shoes clicking against the tile. She wasn't limping, wasn't clutching her chest. The only emergency she had was a bruised ego. I looked down at my own long legs stretched out in front of me. 6'2". I appreciated the leg room, but I didn't weaponize it. The gate agent smiled politely, but her voice was iron. "I'm sorry, ma'am, seat 2A is taken. I can move you tomorrow if you'd prefer." Checkmate, or so I thought. Karen's face tightened, the kind of look I'd seen too many times when she prowled our neighborhood like a hawk. The kind that said, "If I can't get my way, I'll find another rule to twist until I do." She snatched her boarding pass back from the counter, glaring at the waiting area as though one of us had personally wronged her. Her eyes landed on me, just a man in a red polo scrolling his phone. I kept my face neutral, but I saw the flash in her eyes. She'd already made me the villain of her story. Boarding was called a few minutes later. They announced pre-board for crew, but I waved it off with a small shake of my head. I didn't need the attention. I let the others go first, then walked the jet bridge, the metal grating echoing under my shoes. The smell of fuel and recycled air drifted up from the engines below. I slid into 2A, stowed my small roller bag, and pulled out a paperback. Tonight it would be water and words. I had a flight to command in less than 12 hours. Karen wasn't far behind. She paused when she saw me in the seat she'd tried to claim. Her lips curled in disgust. Without a word, she shoved her oversized carry-on into 3B and collapsed into her seat with a dramatic sigh. It should have ended there, just another petty squabble at a gate, but my gut whispered otherwise. That sixth sense pilots develop after thousands of hours in the sky, the one that tells you something's not right even when the instruments are steady. Karen wasn't just upset about a seat, she was waiting for something, and before this flight was over, every single person on that plane would find out what. The engines outside were still spooling as the last passengers shuffled aboard, but the real turbulence had already begun, and it wasn't in the air. I noticed him right away, a man in a suit so shiny it almost reflected the cabin lights. Hair slicked back, shoes polished like mirrors, and a gold signet ring so large it could have been used as a paperweight. He wasn't in first class, but he lingered up front like he owned the aisle. His voice was low, urgent, on a phone call he clearly didn't want overheard. He paced a tight little circle near the galley, right by the cockpit door. The flight attendants were trying to finish their checks, bags tucked neatly into compartments. One of them, Sarah, young, professional, her hair pulled into a neat bun, was organizing her tote in the tiny forward closet. Then it happened. The man stumbled backward too neatly to be an accident. He collided with Sarah hard enough to make her flinch. His voice oozed apology smooth as oil. "Oh, my apologies, so sorry." He reached out, steadying her with one hand. But the other, the one with the gaudy ring, slipped too close to her open tote bag. Just a second, maybe two. His hand dipped where it didn't belong, then it pulled back empty, his smile wide and fake. "Terribly sorry, this call has me all worked up." Sarah nodded politely, brushing it off, but I'd seen it. The stumble wasn't clumsy, it was deliberate. The kind of movement too controlled, too precise. The kind of sleight of hand you don't notice unless your whole job is noticing details that don't fit. My gut tightened, something had been planted. I looked across the aisle, seat 3B Karen. She was on her phone, typing furiously, lips curved into a smug little smile. That wasn't the look of a woman sulking over losing a seat, that was anticipation. It clicked, the fixer in the shiny suit wasn't just another businessman, he was working with her. I leaned back in my seat, forcing myself to stay calm. Don't react, don't draw attention. Pilots learn this early, panic spreads faster than fire. Gather data, observe, store it away for when it matters. As the door closed with that heavy final thud, I replayed Lena's text in my mind. My wife had written, Karen's pushing for an emergency HOA vote tonight, critical zoning variance. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. Just another power grab from the woman who fined us for having holiday lights up past January. But now, with the man in the shiny suit vanishing into the economy cabin and Karen grinning like a cat with cream, the threads started weaving together. A developer, a zoning variance, an HOA president desperate to be home for a late-night meeting, and now a planted item in a flight attendant's bag. Whatever game they were playing, it was bigger than legrooms. The engines roared, deep and steady, vibrating through the floor under my shoes. We pushed back, the cabin lights dimming to a soft glow. Flight attendants launched into their safety demo. People half-watched, half-scrolled on their phones. Everything looked ordinary. But ordinary didn't explain the whisper at the back of my mind. That instinct that something was wrong. Sarah slid her tote from the forward closet into the overhead above row 3, right side. She latched it shut with a casual push. It looked secure. But I knew whatever had been slipped into that bag was now riding with us. The plane tilted onto the runway. I felt the engines surge, pushing us into the seatbacks. The roar rose until it swallowed everything. In less than a minute, we were airborne, the wheels leaving solid ground behind. At 30,000 feet, you learn to trust your senses. The pitch of an engine, the flick of a light, even the faintest rattle can mean the difference between routine and disaster. And right now, everything in me said this wasn't just a flight. It was a setup. An hour in, calm settled over the cabin. The seatbelt sign dinged off and the drink cart started rolling. I ordered water, no ice, always water when I'm deadheading. Across the aisle, Karen ordered a mimosa, holding her glass high like she was celebrating. Then she pulled out her phone again. I saw the little red recording light. She was live streaming. Of course she was, spinning her version of events to the small army of HOA loyalists waiting back home. That's when my phone buzzed. Lena again. A screenshot this time, weather radar. An angry red wall of thunderstorms directly in our path. Looks nasty up there. Stay safe, she wrote. The timing couldn't have been worse. The captain's voice crackled overhead, calm but edged with tension. Folks, we're seeing some weather building ahead. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. The lights flickered twice, then steadied. The air shifted, small bumps at first, then harder jolts, rattling trays and glasses. Nervous laughter rippled through the cabin. Then Karen's call button chimed, once, twice, then rapidly, insistently. The flight attendant leaned over. Ma'am, is everything okay? Her voice was shrill, panicked. It's this man, he can't breathe, he's having a heart attack. I leaned forward. The man in 3A slumped in his seat, pale, eyes closed. Karen fanned him dramatically with a safety card, shouting for a doctor. It looked real enough, but something in the way she orchestrated it, the timing, the volume, the way she angled her phone camera made my stomach twist. A storm outside, a medical emergency inside, both unfolding at the same time, too convenient, too clean. This wasn't chaos, it was choreography. And Karen was directing the play. The cabin lights dimmed as the plane rolled into the storm, rain hammering the fuselage like gravel against glass. Thunder growled outside, muffled but menacing, each flash of lightning painting the rows of faces in pale white for a split second before plunging them back into uneasy shadow. Karen's performance was in full swing. She clutched her phone in one hand, still streaming, while fanning her patient with the other, her voice carried across the cabin. This airline isn't prepared for medical emergencies. This poor man needs a hospital immediately. The flight attendants moved with trained efficiency. They lowered him into the aisle, checked his pulse, blood pressure, airway. A nurse from the back volunteered, calm but concerned. The man was conscious. Breathing, disoriented yes, but not dying. The turbulence made it harder, blood pressure cuffs slipping, carts rattling in their restraints, passengers gasping at sudden jolts. But Karen wasn't helping. She hovered over the nurse, barking advice she clearly didn't understand, narrating the whole scene into her live stream. We need to land, now every second counts. I stayed quiet in 2A, but my chest was tight. It was too perfect. A sudden storm, a sudden medical emergency. The chaos timed like clockwork. I'd seen enough charades to know when a play was rehearsed. The captain's voice broke through the cabin, still steady but carrying a note of urgency. Ladies and gentlemen, due to a medical issue on board and worsening weather ahead, will be diverting to the nearest suitable airport. Estimated time to landing 30 minutes. My screen confirmed what my gut already knew. There was only one major airport in range hours. The same city where Karen's emergency HOA vote was happening tonight. My blood went cold. She was doing it. She was risking an entire aircraft, 180 lives, to make it to a zoning meeting. The plane rocked hard, dropping in an air pocket. Screams echoed. A service cart slammed against its brake, rattling free for half a second before a flight attendant pinned it back. I gripped the armrest and reminded myself I've flown worse. I've handled worse. But the difference was, this wasn't weather anymore, it was intent. That's when I heard it. A faint click. It came from 2 rows ahead, right side, not the satisfying thunk of a bin latching but a weak metallic tick. Wrong, too light, too soft. My eyes locked on the seam of the overhead door above row 3. On the next bump I saw it flex, just a fraction, not secure. In calm skis it might not matter, but in turbulence like this, a 20-pound bag could become a projectile, and that bag, Sarah's bag, the one the slick man had touched, was sitting in that bin. I unbuckled carefully, keeping low. Every instinct screamed at me not to draw attention, but pilots are trained to act before small problems snowball. I steadied myself against seatbacks, moving toward the galley where Maria, the lead attendant, was strapped into her jump seat. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Sir, you need to be seated. Row 3, overhead right. The latch didn't sound right, might be loose, I said low and calm, making sure only she heard. I didn't add I'm a pilot, didn't need to, the words were enough. She blinked once, sharp understanding flickering across her face. Then she unbuckled, her movements sure despite the rocking cabin. She pushed her way to row 3, bracing herself with each step. Her hand pressed the bin. It gave way immediately, swinging open. Her face drained of color. Not clothes, not a suitcase, Sarah's tote. The same tote the man with the gold ring had touched. Maria slammed the bin shut, this time sealing it with a loud, definitive clack. She turned, her eyes locking with mine. Fear, resolve, recognition, she knew I knew, and now we both knew the other knew. She snatched up the interphone, speaking into it in clipped, coded language. Possible device forward overhead, following procedure. A chill shot through me, possible device, not misplaced luggage, not a loose latch, something planted, something dangerous. The plane lurched again, harder this time. The service cart at the front broke completely free, metal wheels clattering as it rolled down the aisle. My stomach clenched. A little boy, maybe 5, scrambled from his seat, reaching for a toy on the floor. The cart barreled toward him, unstoppable. There wasn't time to think. I lunged. My shoulder caught the cart with a jarring crash, pain shooting through bone and muscle. I shoved it sideways into the bulkhead, stopping it cold. Passengers screamed, then gasped in relief. The boy's mother cried out, clutching her son. I buckled him back in, voice rough. Stay put, little man. Maria's eyes were wide when I returned to the galley, breath ragged. She mouthed one word, thank you. But my mind was already elsewhere. The word device rattled through me like ice water. If that tote carried what I thought it did, this wasn't turbulence anymore. This was a bomb threat. The interphone chirped again. The first officer's voice came through, flat, calm, lock it down. No drama, just command. The reinforced cockpit door would stay sealed, no one in, no one out. The crew moved into motion, quiet but swift. Level 2 protocol, I knew it, they'd been trained for it. Secure the cabin, move the item to the least risk bomb location. Contain it as best you can. Sarah, pale and shaking, stared at her tote as though it might bite. Maria steadied her with a hand. You did nothing wrong, now we work, we keep them safe. Passengers, of course, had no idea. To them, it was just turbulence and a sick man in the aisle. They had no clue that the real threat sat sealed inside a piece of hand luggage above their heads. And across the aisle, Karen Lane filmed it all, whispering into her phone, the crew is panicking, they're moving bags in a storm, we're all in danger. Her words made bile rise in my throat, the irony was unbearable, the only reason anyone was in danger at all was her. The descent announcement came over the speakers, the captain's voice steady, unflinching, flight attendants, prepare the cabin for landing. We weren't just racing a storm anymore, we were racing a clock. Because somewhere behind me in the shadows of row 3, a planted device ticked silently with its own agenda. And Karen Lane was smiling like everything was going exactly according to plan. The cabin felt smaller now, like the air itself had thickened. Passengers sat stiff and silent, knuckles white against armrests, their eyes darting to the windows where streaks of rain blurred into silver lines. But it was the crew I watched most. They moved with precision like a team holding their breath. Maria, the lead attendant, took command, her voice firm but quiet. Level 2, by the book, move it to the LRBL. The LRBL, least risk bomb location. Every aircraft has one. On this jet, it was the rear galley door on the right side. The idea was grim but simple. If something detonates, better it tear a hole near reinforced panels designed to blow out the near fuel lines or flight controls. Two attendants approached row 3. They pulled Sarah's tote from the overhead with the delicacy of surgeons, holding it away from their bodies like it was made of glass. Sarah's face was ashen, her hands trembling. Maria gripped her shoulder. You did nothing wrong, eyes forward, focus. They moved slowly down the aisle, turbulence jostling them as if the plane itself wanted to rip the bag away. Passengers craned their necks, whispering. Some thought it was just luggage being rearranged. Others suspected more, but no one knew the truth. Except one man. Halfway down the cabin, my eyes locked on a figure in seat 14C, plain gray jacket, paperback novel open on his lap. He hadn't twitched during the turbulence. He hadn't gasped when the service cart went flying. But now his eyes followed the tote with razor focus. His posture shifted, coiled, ready. Federal Air Marshal. There's no badge, no uniform, no announcement. They blend in, shadows among passengers, but when the moment comes, they're the quiet steel inside the chaos, and he was fully awake now. I felt a flicker of comfort, not safety, but the sense that someone else understood the stakes. The tote disappeared into the rear galley. The crew began layering it, soft luggage, soaked blankets, everything designed to buffer a blast. No words like bomb or device passed their lips. Panic is contagious. Their job was to be the antidote. Up front, Karen Lane whispered into her phone like a war correspondent. The crew's panicking. They're hiding bags in the back. It's complete incompetence. The venom in her voice almost made me laugh. The very people she mocked were the only reason she'd likely live to sip her next mimosa. Another jolt rocked the cabin harder than before. Lightning flashed so bright it seared the inside of my eyelids. The plane groaned, metal flexing under strain. The smell of ozone and recycled air mixed sharp and bitter. Through it all, I listened. Pilots learned to separate noise from meaning, the whine of hydraulics, the steady thump of gear deploying, the bumps of flaps extending, all normal, comforting. But tonight, every sound carried weight, every creak felt like a countdown. I glanced at the screen in front of me. We were descending, slicing through thick cloud. Outside, flashes of city lights blinked between sheets of rain. Home, so close I could trace highways I drove every week. But it didn't feel like homecoming, it felt like flying into an ambush. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Lena again, her texts poured in like a second storm. Emergency HOA meeting is live, developer is there. He's laughing, says the variance is basically a done deal. Says Karen's delayed but will arrive shortly. He's gloating, Evan, he thinks it's funny. The fury that welled in me was cold, not hot. They weren't just reckless. They weren't just greedy. They thought this whole flight, every passenger, every crew member, every family waiting at home was nothing more than a ride service, a private taxi to a vote that would make them rich. I wanted to stand up and shout it, expose her right there in 3B, but my training held me back. Not yet. Not until the wheels were on the ground and steel doors surrounded us. The plane jolted again, this time with a stomach-lurching drop that made passengers scream. Drinks spilled, a laptop clattered to the floor. Someone vomited into a bag. The air itself seemed alive, clawing at us from every angle. Then it came, the faint sound again, click. Row 3, that same weak metallic latch, my heart spiked. Maria saw it too. She bolted down the aisle, bracing herself against seats. She shoved the bin closed with both hands, sealing it with a sharp, decisive clack. She turned, eyes flashing with fear and iron resolve. The interphone chirped, her voice coded and clipped. Suspicious item relocated, cabin secure. But secure was a relative word. Because the truth was, we were strapped into a metal tube hurtling through a storm, carrying a device no one dared to name, placed there by a man with a gold ring, and orchestrated by a woman live-streaming lies to her HOA cronies. The reinforced cockpit door was a fortress now. The pilots inside were blind to the drama behind them. Their only job, land this beast in one piece. The rest fell to us, to the crew, the marshal and me. the anonymous man in 2A who just wanted a quiet ride home. The storm clawed at us, tossing the plane like a toy. Passengers gripped their seats, eyes wide, mouths open in silent prayers. The overhead bins rattled, plastic flexing with each violent jolt. Rain pelted the windows, a drumbeat that never stopped. And in the back, surrounded by blankets and bags, sat a tote, a quiet, deadly question mark. I leaned my head back, closing my eyes for just a second. One thought looped over and over. This isn't turbulence, this isn't an emergency, this is choreography. Someone wants this plane down here now, and they don't care who gets hurt. The wheels slammed into wet tarmac with a jarring thud, jolting us all forward in our seats. A second bump harder, followed by the roar of reverse thrust as the engines clawed against momentum. We were down, not safe, just down. The cabin erupted in nervous chatter. Some passengers clapped, relief spilling out in shaky applause, but the knot in my stomach didn't loosen, not yet. We didn't roll toward the main terminal. Instead, the plane slowed, veering onto a distant taxiway. Out the window, blue and red lights flashed against sheets of rain. Fire trucks, airport police. An ambulance idled with doors open, waiting. This wasn't a routine diversion, the ground already knew. The aircraft stopped, the engines whined down into an exhausted hum. Inside, silence pressed heavy. The captain's voice came overhead, calm but stripped of warmth. All passengers remain seated. I repeat, remain seated. That tone left no room for argument, but there are always people who think rules don't apply to them. From the back, a figure stood. He moved fast, too fast. Slick suit, polished shoes, heavy gold ring flashing under fluorescent lights. The fixer. He barreled forward, words spilling smooth but tight. Sorry, tight connection, have to get off now. He brushed past a flight attendant like she wasn't even there. But I was in 2A, less than 10 feet from the exit, and I saw his plan. He wasn't running for the terminal. He was going for the jet bridge side door, the emergency stairs that led straight down to the rain-slicked tarmac. He thought he could vanish in the storm. The air marshal moved, gray jacket, paperback, forgotten body flowing down the aisle with the precision of a predator. His voice cut the air, calm but iron. Sir, return to your seat. The fixer ignored him, slipping onto the bridge. His shoes clattered against the metal, desperation in every step. I unbuckled, instinct took over, training hammered into me through years of emergencies. Contain the threat, don't escalate chaos. I stepped into the aisle, blocking his way back in. My roller bag was in my hand, heavy, 20 pounds of clothes and manuals packed tight. The marshal was right behind him, shouting, "Federal agent, stop." The fixer spun, panic twisted his face, slick confidence burned away. His hand darted inside his jacket, he pulled out a knife. It wasn't big but thin, sharp, wicked, designed for one thing. He waved it like a trapped animal, wild-eyed. Stay back. Passengers gasped, the flight attendants froze, the air in the cabin turned brittle electric. My instincts screamed, I wasn't armed, but I had my bag. He lunged, not at the marshal, at the side door. He wanted chaos, a moment to slip free. I didn't swing like a club, too slow. I dropped my shoulder, shoved my roller bag hard into his path. The corner slammed into his wrist with a sickening crack. The knife clattered onto the jet bridge floor. He howled, stumbling sideways. That was all the marshal needed. He moved in, faster than my eyes could track, arm twisted, shoulder pinned, body slammed against corrugated metal. 2 airport police officers surged up the bridge from outside, piling on. Shouts, commands, grunts of pain. It was over in seconds, brutal, efficient. The fixer was cuffed, face pressed against steel, gold ring glinting as his wrists were yanked behind his back. He screamed, voice raw, and then he twisted, eyes wild, spitting rage back into the cabin. You, he shouted, eyes locking on Karen Lane, who stood in the aisle filming. This was your plan, you set me up. Her jaw dropped, the smirk she'd worn all flight vanished. Color drained from her face, her phone trembled in her hand. For once, Karen Lane had no script. Passengers gasped, phones rising to capture the scene. The woman who'd built a reputation as queen of the HOA, untouchable, untiring, smug, was now exposed under fluorescent lights, her fixer dragged away in cuffs. The air marshal retrieved the knife with gloved hands, slipping it into an evidence bag. His eyes met mine for a brief second. A nod, silent acknowledgement, we'd both done our jobs in our own ways. The cabin was buzzing now, whispers rising like static. But the threat wasn't over, not yet, because the tote was still on board, and Karen Lane was still trying to salvage her story. She lifted her phone, voice trembling but defiant. There was a terrorist, a violent man, the crew did nothing. I was so scared for my life. Her words were pathetic, desperate, and for the first time I saw the mask cracking. Because this wasn't a story she could spin her way out of, not anymore. The cabin had shifted from chaos to a buzzing unease. The fixer was gone, dragged off in cuffs, but the echoes of his shouts clung to the air like smoke. "This was your plan, you set me up." Those words weren't going away. Karen Lane slumped back into 3B, her face a ruin of shock and denial. She tried to recover, clutching her phone, but her live stream had slipped from control. Passengers whispered, cameras tilted her way. The self-proclaimed Queen of Cedar Creek was no longer narrating a spectacle, she was the spectacle. Then the jet bridge filled with new figures, not airline staff, not local cops. Jackets marked TSA and FBI, authority carried in their stride, sharp eyes scanning every detail. A woman in a dark suit stepped into the cabin, steady and composed. She spoke softly with Maria, who gestured toward the rear of the plane, then pointed at me. She approached, her gaze direct. "Sir, I'm Agent Miller. I understand you witnessed the incident at the front of the flight." I stood, keeping my voice low. "Yes, the man with the gold ring deliberately bumped a flight attendant. He slipped something into her bag. Later, I heard the latch click open in turbulence. I reported it. The crew relocated the bag." Her eyes narrowed, sharp but not unkind. "Name?" "Evan Cross." "Occupation?" A pause. This was the moment anonymity ended. "Pilot with this airline." Her expression flickered with understanding. My calm, my precision, it made sense now. She nodded once. "Thank you, Captain Cross. Your testimony will be important." Behind her, 2 TSA specialists in heavy bomb gear emerged from the rear galley. They carried Sarah's tote inside a sealed containment case, hands steady despite the weight of what it implied. They disappeared down the bridge to a waiting unit outside. The cabin buzzed louder, some passengers cried quietly, others filmed everything. But Karen still had fight left in her. She turned her camera back on, her voice rising in mock outrage. "This airline endangered us. The crew is incompetent. I demand accountability." Agent Miller's head turned. She walked straight to Karen's row. Her voice was ice. "Ma'am, I need you to power down your phone. This is an active investigation." Karen bristled, eyes flashing. "I have a right to record. I'm documenting the negligence here." Miller leaned in, dropping her voice half an octave, stripping it of patience. "This is a federal investigation. Your phone is now evidence. Turn it off." The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. For the first time, Karen Lane seemed to understand the weight of the rules she couldn't bend. Her face crumpled. She fumbled with the screen, live stream dying mid-sentence. Another agent entered from the bridge, moving quickly to Miller's side. His voice was low, but I was close enough to catch the words. "It's a jammer, high-powered RF, disrupts passenger devices, handheld comms, GPS at short range, not flight controls, but perfect for confusion on approach." Miller's jaw tightened. The agent continued, "Purchase traced, corporate card, shell company, Oak Valley Holdings." My stomach turned cold. Oak Valley, the developer buying up homes in our neighborhood, the company Karen was championing back home. The agent wasn't finished. "And the mailing address for that company, same P.O. box listed for Cedar Creek HOA. It all clicked into place. The fixer, the planted device, the fake medical emergency, the storm diversion, all threads in one web, a coordinated plot to ground this flight in our city in time for one woman to cast a vote. Karen Lane. Miller's gaze drifted back to her. The HOA tyrant who once fined neighbors for mailbox paint was now staring down federal agents over a suspected sabotage conspiracy. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her. But the net wasn't closed yet, not until every piece of proof was locked tight. That's when my phone buzzed again. Lena. She wasn't just texting this time. She was sending a flood, screenshots, PDFs, photos. While I'd been in the storm, she'd been building a case on the ground. First, a doorbell camera still. Timestamp 7:00 a.m. Karen Lane in her driveway speaking with the fixer. He handed her an envelope, clear as daylight. Second, a catering receipt. Champagne and lobster tails for a zoning victory party ordered 2 days ago, paid for by the Cedar Creek HOA account, embezzlement on top of conspiracy. Third, a screenshot from the HOA livestream chat. One of Karen's allies posting, "Don't worry, Karen has a plan to get here no matter what, she's very resourceful." It was all there, collusion, foreknowledge, intent. I walked to Agent Miller holding out my phone. "You need to see this." She scrolled through Lena's digital arsenal. Her face shifted from curiosity to grim certainty. She paused on the doorbell still, zooming in on the fixer's ring, then on the catering invoice, then the chat. "Well," she murmured, handing the phone back, "that ties it up with a bow." She turned to Karen, who was trying to look small in her seat, hands clutched around her purse. But it was too late, the walls had closed in. The airline's head of station security boarded then, a stern man in a suit. Miller conferred with him briefly. He stepped forward, voice booming through the tense cabin. "Karen Lane, on behalf of this airline, you are banned for life. We are referring this matter to the FAA, TSA, and DOJ." Gasps rippled through the rows. A lifetime ban was the airline's death sentence. Karen's face went chalk white, her lips moved, but no words came. Miller wasn't finished. Two uniformed officers stepped forward. Her voice was formal now, cutting through the hush. "Karen Lane, you are under arrest for conspiracy to interfere with a flight crew, endangering the safety of an aircraft, and other federal charges. You have the right to remain silent." The click of handcuffs was louder than any thunder outside. Phones rose in unison. Passengers filmed, whispering, cheering under their breath. The Queen of Cedar Creek, who once ruled with petty fines and threats, was now led down the aisle in cuffs, her crown shattered in full view of 180 witnesses. And for the first time all flight, silence felt like justice. The rain hadn't stopped when I finally stepped out of the terminal, hours after the landing. My clothes were damp with sweat, my muscles sore from adrenaline wearing off, but the night air felt like freedom. Lena was waiting by the curb. I dropped my bag and wrapped her in my arms, holding on longer than I ever had. "You were amazing," I whispered. She pulled back, her smile tired but fierce. "No, we were amazing." We drove home in silence, windshield wipers thumping against glass, the storm easing into drizzle. My phone buzzed again, a steady stream of notifications, news alerts, text chains, videos already going viral. Passengers' footage of Karen being cuffed was spreading like wildfire. Headlines used words like conspiracy, device on board, HOA president arrested. By the time we turned into Cedar Creek, the glow from the clubhouse lights told me the emergency meeting was still going. Midnight had come and gone, but the fight wasn't over. Lena looked at me, her voice steady. "Let's finish this." We walked into the clubhouse together. The room was buzzing, neighbors packed shoulder to shoulder, some still in pajamas, others with coats thrown over slippers. They'd seen the videos, the headlines, they knew. At the front, Karen's allies on the board looked rattled, trying to stall. Papers shuffled, whispers hissed, excuses flew, but the tide had shifted. The developer was gone, fled the moment the arrest hit social media. His chair sat empty, his carefully prepared documents abandoned like trash. The smug certainty of his deal had evaporated. And then from the back, my neighbor Mike stood. Quiet Mike, the retired accountant who once got fined for a tacky garden gnome. His voice, usually soft, carried firm across the room. "I believe a motion is in order," he said, adjusting his glasses with shaking hands. "According to our bylaws, any board member charged with a felony is subject to immediate removal, effective immediately." A woman I didn't know raised her hand. "I second the motion." The vote was called, hands shot up, dozens then dozens more. It wasn't close, it was unanimous. Karen Lane, dictator of landscaping rules, tyrant of mailbox paint, saboteur of an aircraft, was officially removed as president of the Cedar Creek HOA. Cheers erupted, loud enough to shake the rafters. Some cried, others hugged. Relief poured through the room like sunlight breaking storm clouds. Mike was elected interim president on the spot. His first act, simple, clear, fair. He announced that the zoning variance would be voted on next month by full paper ballot mailed to every resident. No surprise meetings, no manipulation, transparency at last. The crowd roared its approval. For the first time in years, Cedar Creek wasn't divided by fear of fines or whispered threats. It was united. As the meeting wound down, neighbors came up to Lena and me, voices hushed with gratitude. "We saw the video of you stopping that cart. We saw what she tried to do. Thank you for protecting us." I shook my head. "I just noticed things that didn't fit. That's my job." But inside, I felt something I hadn't in months: hope. Later that week, the vote came. The zoning variance was crushed, 98-2. The developer filed bankruptcy not long after, lawsuits piling up like sandbags around a sinking ship. The fixer Frank, I later learned, took a plea, trading testimony for a shorter sentence. And Karen, stripped of her title, drained by legal bills, she sold her house at a loss. Convicted on federal charges, sentenced to 10 years. The woman who once measured rose bushes with a ruler would measure time behind bars instead. Cedar Creek began to breathe again, rules softened, neighbors laughed at barbecues without fear of fines, kids played basketball in driveways, gardens bloomed in colors once banned, and yes, gnomes reappeared, tackier than ever, defiantly standing guard. One evening, weeks later, I stood on my back deck, grill sizzling, the air heavy with the smell of burgers. The sun painted the sky orange and purple. Lena brought me iced tea, her arm slipping around my waist. The sound of children's laughter drifted through the quiet streets, blending with the hum of lawnmowers and cicadas. "You never told me what you did on that jet bridge," she said softly. I flipped a burger, the sizzle punctuating the silence. "I just solved a problem," I answered. And it was true, I wasn't a hero. I was just a man trying to protect his home, his neighbors, his family. Because sometimes defending your community isn't about grand gestures. It's about paying attention to the wrong kind of click. It's about knowing when to act. It's about refusing to let fear and greed rewrite the rules of the place you belong. That night, as the last light faded, I finally understood the question that had haunted me on that flight. How far will a man go to defend his owns? As far as he needs to, with calm, with courage, with resolve. And if he's lucky, with a partner at his side who knows how to fight storms on the ground while he fights them in the sky. The weeks turned into months, and life in Cedar Creek began to feel different, lighter, freer. The storm that once hovered over our neighborhood had finally passed. It wasn't about the houses or the lawns. It wasn't about bylaws or fines. It was about something deeper, the weight of fear, the shadow of control. For years, we'd lived under it, too tired or too intimidated to push back. Now that weight was gone. The headlines eventually faded. National networks had swarmed at first, HOA president arrested in flight scandal, but the world moved on as it always does. Yet here in Cedar Creek, the echoes lingered. Neighbors waved more, people stopped to chat at mailboxes instead of rushing inside. The silence of fear had been replaced by the hum of belonging. One evening, I walked down the cul-de-sac, boots crunching against gravel, the air cool with early fall. Porch lights flicked on, kids zipped past on bikes, laughter trailing behind them. A far cry from the night of the storm, when laughter had been replaced by screams at 30,000 feet. I paused at Mike's house, the new HOA president. His wife had planted sunflowers along the fence line, tall and stubborn, their heads tilted proudly toward the setting sun, the kind of flowers Karen would have called unsightly. Now they stood like banners of victory. Mike was on the porch, rocking chair creaking, papers spread across his lap. He looked up and waved. "Evening, Evan." "Evening," I called back, keeping the books balanced. He chuckled, trying. "Turns out when you stop spending HOA funds on catered dinners, the math isn't so hard." We both laughed, easy and unforced. As I walked home, I thought about Karen, about Frank the fixer, about the web of greed and ego that had almost dragged us all down. I wondered if she replayed it in her mind, sitting in a concrete cell, the storm, the knife, the cuffs, the moment when power slipped from her fingers. Maybe she told herself she was the victim. Maybe she blamed Frank, the airline, even me. People like her rarely look inward. But the truth was simple. She'd gambled with lives for a zoning vote, and she lost. There was a time I might have felt satisfaction in that. Justice served, balance restored. But standing there under the fatting sky, I felt something else entirely: pity. Because in chasing control, she'd lost the one thing she couldn't buy back: respect. The house she sold now sat empty, shutters closed, grass tall and wild. No one hurried to tear it down or flip it for profit. It just lingered, a hollow shell of ambition, a reminder. Back at my place, Lena was waiting on the porch swing, a glass of sweet tea in her hand. She looked up with that steady gaze that had anchored me through everything. "How's the neighborhood?" she asked. "Alive," I said simply. We sat together in the quiet, fireflies blinking in the yard. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the urge to keep scanning for what didn't fit. Tonight, everything fit. The cicadas hummed, the swing creaked, the air smelled of cut grass and barbecue drifting from down the street. And I realized something. Justice doesn't always come with sirens or headlines. Sometimes it comes with neighbors choosing to vote, with kids playing in driveways, with flowers blooming where they once weren't allowed. Sometimes justice looks ordinary. I thought back to that flight, the roar of engines, the sharp smell of ozone, the terror of a loose latch above row 3. I thought about the boy I'd buckled back into his seat, his wide eyes shining with fear. Somewhere he was probably telling his friends about the storm he flew through, about the scary man taken away by police. He'd never know the device was real or how close it came, and maybe that was for the best. Because sometimes protecting people means making sure they never truly know how close they were to the edge. As the stars appeared overhead, I felt the tension I'd carried since that night finally leave my chest. For the first time in a long time, I breathed easy. Karen Lane once believed power came from fear, from rules, from fines, from control. But standing there, watching my neighbors laugh and live without her shadow overhead, I knew better. True power isn't fear. It's trust. It's community. It's the quiet strength of ordinary people who refuse to be pushed around, who choose to stand together when it matters most. That's the lesson I carried from that storm, from that flight, from that woman who thought she could bend the world to her will. And maybe that's what life is in the end. A long flight through unpredictable skis, storms that come without warning, turbulence you can't always avoid. You can't stop the storms, but you can choose how you fly through them. And sometimes the worst storm is exactly what it takes to remind you what home really means. Every HOA has a story on HOA headaches. You'll hear the ones they tried to bury. Subscribe today.